You got the Tennessee Volunteers going to Death Valley for an 11 a.m. Central kick against the LSU Tigers. This is going to be a fun one. Ranked matchup and a lot riding on this game for Tennessee. Coming off a bye week, you beat Florida the week before in checkered Neyland. You're feeling good. You're getting yourself a little bit more healthy. There's a lot of confidence around this team. There's a lot of confidence, and they have earned the right to have that confidence. They've earned the right for this game to mean something for them. We talked about it last time we checked in on Tennessee, but they have now allowed themselves to play a lot of meaningful games in October. And the stretch is going to be wild for the Volunteers. They go, obviously, at LSU this week. They have Bama at home, play UT Martin, but then they go to Kentucky and to Georgia. That stretch outside of UT Martin is going to be the gauntlet. So for Tennessee, this is kind of going to be the next building block that you got to lay down to then you have Bama, and so on and so forth, like the schedule that I just mentioned. But it's the chance to climb another rung for this program. And we talk about it. Each win can mean as much as they allow the next one to mean. What I mean by that is if they beat LSU, well, then it lines up for, okay, that's going to make the Bama game mean more. You play Bama. Let's say you beat Bama. You play UT Martin. That Kentucky game means a lot more. And that's privilege. Like we've already talked about, the pressure is privilege. You earn the right to play in big games and have a lot of people watching your games. You earn the right to have a lot of recruits watching your games, and I promise you they'll be watching this one, regardless of if they're there or not. For LSU, they're cautiously optimistic. It's been a little bit of an interesting year for them in year one under Brian Kelly. A lot of slow starts offensively. Defense has played really well, and a lot of games where it feels like the offense is sort of slouching back, kind of hanging back in the game, and then, oh, it's second half? Oh, you need us to really play well? Okay, we're gonna lean forward here, and we're locked in. That's the way it feels. I'm curious to see how they start in this kind of a game where a really formidable opponent shows up in Tennessee. Not to knock Florida State, not to knock Mississippi State, not to knock Auburn, but the glamour of a team like Tennessee coming to your house to play, I think that could maybe get LSU's attention a little bit more early. So we'll see what happens there. The hinge points for this game, like we just alluded to, what happens in the first quarter? Because if you're LSU, you can't afford to go down 17-0 to Tennessee. That's just the reality. I understand that you were able to do it against Auburn. You were able to climb back in the game and almost play for overtime against Florida State. Tennessee's got the number one ranked offense in the country. If you go down 2 scores to them, if you go down 17 points to them, it's going to be real hard to climb back in, especially with what you have exemplified offensively. It's going to be hard to score with them. That's just the reality. Cedric Tillman for Tennessee is going to be monitored. Personally, I'd be very surprised if he played in this game. But even with him out, they've got some dudes all over this offense. Brew McCoy, Jalen Hyatt, Jabari Small. Hendon Hooker is going to be in the Heisman race if it were to be given out today. I don't think it's a question of whether or not you give him the award. Maybe it's between him and Bryce Young. You understand what I'm saying. Hendon Hooker is a dude. He's going to give you issues. You can't go down early if you're LSU. You got to throw a punch, and you have to be at least in it in that first quarter. Because if you're not in the first quarter, and if you go down, let's just say at the end of the game, end of the first quarter, it's 10-0. Well, then where does that pressure go? Goes back to the offense, right? Which is not anything new for LSU. But with how much Tennessee can score and how much they're going to score, you then ask your quarterback, Jaden Daniels, to do something he hasn't done just yet against Power 5 competition. Last week against Auburn, it's well documented, threw for 80 yards. Had 5 yards in the second half against Auburn. Credit Auburn, they did some good things defensively, but of the 8 completions he had, 5 of them were to a running back or a tight end. What? Like that's a real stat. Are you serious? With all the guys that they supposedly have at wide receiver, they need to find a way to get them the football. That's another point we're going to get to in a second, but I'm just saying you don't want to be in a situation where you're asking Jaden Daniels to go out there and try and air it out to win the game for you, because that would, again, be something that he hasn't done. Really good with his legs. Think that'll play a factor, but you don't want to ask him to go out there and throw for 400, because if you do, I think you find yourselves in an uncomfortable spot if you're LSU. So the next question then, for Jaden Daniels, what kind of approach does he take to this game? talking to some people from the Bengal Tiger over there on our On3 LSU site, Matty B, Shay Dixon, they do an elite job covering that program. And I was picking their brain about this game this coming weekend, and the sentiment between the two of them was the same. Jaden Daniels doesn't need to throw for 400, 500, but he has to unhitch the wagon with trying to push the ball vertical. Credit Jaden Daniels. He's done a great job taking care of the football to this point in the season. With that being said, taking care of the football and not getting it to the best players on the field vertically is not a good thing. Okay, I think, I'm not going to speak for Brian Kelly, but I think he would take one interception if he's going to take some more shots downfield and try and find Kayshon Boutte, try and find Malik Neighbors, and push the ball vertically. Even just trying to do that forces your defense to have to honor those guys. And I think on top of that, if it's not going to be vertical, like let's just say that Jaden Daniels doesn't push the ball 30 yards downfield, doesn't take as many deep shots downfield. That's okay. But the flip side of that is these guys still need to see the football. There's some hungry mouths that need to be fed. Kayshon Boutte has less than 100 yards receiving on the year. What? To have one loss as LSU and to have your best player arguably only have 90-plus yards? It's impressive, but it can't be the way that this goes against the better competition. Against Tennessee, he needs to be a part of the action. It's just the case that it is. So back to the point I was making, if it's not downfield, it's got to be in the slant game. It's got to be in the intermediate game. Hit him on a dig, hit him on an out route. There's got to be some sort of concerted effort to get your best players the football. Football is a relatively simple game made complex by stupid people. I'm not knocking Coach Denbrock or Brian Kelly. I'm just saying let's not oversimplify this thing. Just as a whole, get Kayshon Boutte the football and allow Jaden Daniels to have easy throws to that man. And Jaden Daniels, pull the trigger, brother. It's got to happen. You got to get the ball to those playmakers, just the way that it is. If he can do that, you make a lot more people happy around you. You have a better chance to win this game. Just a lot of things go your way if you're able to make that happen. So, the final thing that I'm looking at in this game, Tennessee's offense is really good. It's not novel analysis. It's just a fact. Tennessee's offense is one of the best in the country. Hendon Hooker, for my money, again, one of the best in the country. No Cedric Tillman last week for them against Florida, no problem. Well, 2 weeks ago, no problem. Still racked up tons of offensive yardage, did a lot in the passing game. Hendon Hooker's that guy. What they want to do offensively is establish the running game and then ideally loosening up that front seven to throw the football. That's kind of how this thing operates for Tennessee. Now, in this game, it may be a little bit more reversed with trying to throw to set up the run, but bottom line, running the football is going to be a key ingredient for Tennessee in this football game. Now, the luxury for LSU is they got a really good front four and a really good front seven if you want to take it a step further. Harold Perkins, a freshman, we told you about him on this program before in our spring intel segment. We told you he's a guy. He's been a guy thus far. I'm curious to watch that battle because, like we talked about with that Florida game, if Tennessee's having trouble establishing the run and it goes on for 2 quarters, well, then that just gives LSU time to sort of get the wind under them, get their legs under them, figure it out offensively, and it's a lower scoring game. Now, the other side of that is if they just say, forget the run game, we like our matchups outside, can they get to Hendon Hooker? B.J. Ojulari was at one point in time a committed player to Tennessee. Obviously, he's not. He's at LSU. He's going to have his work cut out for him. They got to get to Hendon Hooker. They got to find a way to make him uncomfortable. This unit a season ago, the Tennessee offensive line, they were not great protecting him. They've been substantially better this year. But for LSU, that's one of your opportunities. That's one of your potential edges in this game if you can get to Hendon Hooker. Because regardless of how much Tennessee likes those matchups outside, regardless of how good they feel about Brew McCoy and Jalen Hyatt, if LSU gets to Hendon Hooker before he can even have a chance to throw to those guys, well, then advantage LSU. So that's a big hinge point. Does Hendon Hooker have time to operate? And then on top of that, do they have the luxury of getting the run game going early to even make those matchups on the outside more noticeable and more evident, and then have big plays come off of that? That's what Tennessee wants to do. At the end of the day, though, this game is being played in Death Valley, and it's a little bit earlier. So the atmosphere is different than it would have been at night. If it's at night, you probably have people that have just been going at it all day long, ready for some football, places packed, crazy atmosphere. Tennessee plays in the morning. Excuse me. Well, they played this morning, but they practice in the morning. They're accustomed to having a quick start early in the day. How much does that mean? Remains to be seen, but I think it's worth noting. Going back to the atmosphere, there's probably going to be a little bit more of a toned down Death Valley for 11 a.m., just from what we're hearing. I think Tennessee just has too much firepower. I think they're going to force the issue and score points early. And then Jaden Daniels, I think, does have a little bit more success downfield. I think that he, out of just necessity, has to try that. They have some success, but ultimately, with what you're doing at Tennessee, with how many points I think they're going to score in the matchups they like on the outside, I think Tennessee wins this game 31-21. And then that becomes the thing at Tennessee, right? Okay, check that one off. Next one means even more. Even more eyes on us at Tennessee. Josh Heupel has even more fodder to use when it comes to the recruiting game. This thing is continuing to build. It's like a tidal wave. With each win, a little more energy, a little bit more surge. For LSU, looking down the road, this year was more of a let's see what we can do kind of year under Brian Kelly. It's not what it's going to be. You have a quarterback that Shea Dixon, I think, put it really articulately on their podcast, that you have now rented. But at the end of the day, LSU is going to be fine down the road. And this one, Tennessee just further along. Better offense, too much for LSU. They forced the issue. Tennessee wins this game 31-21 in Death Valley. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.